Hello everybody and welcome back. I am your host Chase Bierenkoven. That is the 2025 Toyota GR Corolla and this is the Overrun. Now 2025 is a very important year for the GR Corolla. That's because this year it got a facelift. There is a very literal new face, and most importantly, there's also a very new 8-speed automatic transmission. This one is a manual, but we'll talk a little bit about what it's like to drive that automatic later. Other changes include new suspension, which should help the Corolla dive a little bit less on launch and corner a little bit better and have a little bit more grip all around. Speaking of more grip, the previously optional front and rear Torsen limited slip differentials are now standard. That does raise the base price of the Corolla a good chunk, but I figure so many people were optioning them anyways that it's probably worth just having them included as standard from now on. Other changes include more torque. Now you get 295 foot-pounds of torque from this turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, and that is the figure that the previous 2024 Maurizio edition made, and that rounds out 2025's changes. Powering the 2025 Toyota GR Corolla is the same 1.6-liter 3-cylinder turbocharged motor. Of course, now for 2025, it makes more torque, and total output is 300 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque. All of that is mated to your choice in transmission, either the standard 6-speed manual or the new 8-speed automatic transmission. Either way, you're spinning all four wheels via that transmission and the now standard Torsen limited slip differentials. 2025 does not bring a whole lot of changes to the interior, however, but because this is the Premium Plus trim, you do get some nice, well, not luxuries, but some niceties that you don't get in other places in the Corolla lineup. For one, there's this very nice heated and leather-wrapped steering wheel. There's also these very nicely upholstered, sporty seats with suede inserts, leather trimmings, and some red stitching. The dash is also a little bit nicer. And other than that, this is all standard GR Corolla, which we have talked about at length in our other reviews. If you want to watch that one and see our initial impressions on the GR Corolla, we'll go ahead and leave a link somewhere. Moving on, there are a couple of other things that I want to hit on in here. For one, there's really just not a lot of places to put things. There is no center armrest because you have to, change gears. Thankfully, that gear shift is very easy to manipulate, falls readily to hand, and there's really nothing in your way as a result of that. I love that these climate controls are physical. The infotainment system is a little bit laggy though, and I have had some connectivity issues with Android Auto. That's something that I'm noticing in a lot of Toyota products, so definitely just keep that in mind if you're using wired phone projection. If you do it wirelessly, however, I haven't had a whole lot of issues, so keep that in mind. Other than that, I really like this interior. My driving position is very excellent. I feel like I have okay visibility despite the fact that the dash is a little bit high, and overall it's a pretty comfy place to be. I do want to point out though that it is very loud in here, and that is as a result of this being more of a sports car than a hatchback. So the thing about the GR Corolla is that the further back that you go, the less room that there is. I'm short, so I have room though, which is nice. I can kind of get my feet under the front seat and stretch out a little bit, but there's not a lot of headroom. I would not want to be an adult who's like not Hobbit sized and spend 6 hours back here. That said, it feels fine back here. That's really not the point of this car. The nice thing is that this car goes fast and it also has back seats, and I think that we should leave it at that. Let's also talk cargo space while we're here, or what little of it there is. Allegedly, there is 17.8 cubic feet of cargo space in here. It also just feels like a lot less for a couple of reasons. For one, there is this $750 optional chassis brace, which will get in the way of large items. Of course, that is optional, so make that decision at your own peril. We've got our backpack in here for scale, and you can see that it eats up most of the cargo bay as it is. On top of that, you lose quite a lot of room back here due to the way that Toyota has structured the car. You can see that there's a lot of styrofoam and stuff back here. You get some storage cubbies, but the battery is located back here, which eats up a lot of the load floor space. As you can see, you lose almost an entire hand in cargo depth due to this styrofoam tray battery arrangement. So is the GR Corolla practical? Sort of, but you're also probably not going to survive the IKEA run without having to go rent a truck from Home Depot. So let's talk about the money, because as I mentioned, the GR Corolla is now a little bit more expensive due to those newly standard limited slip differentials. The lineup starts now at $39,995. However, that's definitely not this one. The car that you see here in this video is much closer to $48,000, which is getting into Civic Type R territory. That's because this is the new Premium Plus trim. You get a couple of things with that. Chiefly, you get these matte black wheels, you get a new forged carbon roof included, you get this power bulge hood, which is very neat, and most importantly, I would argue, you get a new sub-radiator included as standard. You can get it as an option if you get, say, a core car because you want the stripped out car with the cooling, but it's included here, and that obviously just helps with temps because owners were having issues on the track, and Toyota has chosen to address it for this model year.
So, driving the GR Corolla, there are a couple of things I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about the way that this it sits in this weird little, you could call it a Goldilocks zone almost, where it's more expensive than some of these softer edged competitors or sporty cars in this segment. Stuff like the Civic Si, the Golf GTI, the Elantra, and all of those notably are front wheel drive, and this is probably more expensive because, you know, it's got all wheel drive with the selectable, you know, torque split and that 3-cylinder engine. Toyota finds ways to justify that price increase. However, what Toyota has also managed to do is kind of undercut some of the harder edge stuff from those same brands. So I'm talking about stuff like the Golf R, of course, the Civic Type R, and the Integra Type S. Only one of those notably is also all-wheel drive, which again helps make the GR Corolla pretty unique in its segment, powertrain notwithstanding, because of course this is a very unique powertrain. It also makes about the same power as a lot of those harder edged cars. You know, they're about 300 horsepower. At least here on a back road, it's pretty hard to feel the difference between a lot of these cars. With that said, when you go and set out to make a sporty hatchback, commuter car, whatever, you have to kind of weight the scales in a few different ways. It depends on the manufacturer, right? You have cars that are tilted more towards that like sporty, you know, hard-edged, weekend fun car like the GR Corolla, or you have cars that are tilted much more towards stuff like the GTI, i.e. being better commuter cars. Now that's all well and good, and Toyota just happens to have picked this end of the spectrum. I think it fits on the whole with what like the GR brand has set out to accomplish, and I think that this feels pretty much where it should be. However, of course, because they have tilted the scale that way, that also means that there are some things that this car is not so good at, like being a hatchback. The chassis brace is optional, and you can fit 4 sets of wheels and tires in here, as Toyota likes to point out, but people frequently carry larger items in their cars and wider ones than that. It's not so great at fitting the big wide stuff, largely because of that huge like styrofoam component that we saw in our cargo segment, right? That battery piece gets in the way and definitely limits your cargo space. The back seats are also very cramped, as we've talked about. And on top of that, we have, of course, the problems with some of the noise, vibration, and, excuse me, I have to pay attention for a second, harshness. Of course, the trade-off is this, right? Really fast car. That's super illegal. I was saving that for the but it drives like a sports car segment. But you know, the noise, vibration, and harshness issues kind of fade once you get above 3,000 RPM. You kind of stop caring because this is just such a fun car to drive. Tire noise, road noise, and overly stiff ride for the street be damned. The GR Corolla is just so much fun, and I think it has more character than anything in this segment. Now, there's one caveat here, okay? I have not driven a Civic Type R, and I understand that the Civic Type R gives you the same sort of, to use the James May parlance, fizz. And I get that, but man, it's gonna be really tough to beat this, you know? Now, I do have some complaints with the way that this car goes fast, namely in the pedal arrangement. I feel like the gap between the accelerator pedal and the brake pedal are a little bit much, and the gearbox, when you're really going for it, can be a little bit tricky. However, it also gets better the faster you go, and pretty soon on a good piece of back road, you're gonna find yourself pushing well beyond what you should be doing on a public road, just because the GR Corolla and its all-wheel drive system are so competent and so easy to use and predict. My personal favorite is the gravel mode. I use it pretty much whenever I am driving this car, because that 30%, 70% to the rear blend lets you get a lot of like rotation out of the car, especially mid-corner, and it helps you kind of balance it a little bit more like a rear drive sports car. The 50-50 mode is pretty good too, and you're not gonna get a ton of understeer from this thing. That said, if you do plan on tracking this car a lot, you may find yourself reaching for some better pads and fluid. However, I think that the brakes are going to be great for an overwhelming majority of people. I have been driving this thing really hard for about the last hour and a half on some of our favorite local back roads, and I haven't really had any brake fade issues, but that's because I keep getting stuck behind Nissan Frontiers doing 9 under the speed limit and having to flip around. But with that said, I think that it's probably a good time to wrap up and get to our conclusion here. So in summary, the 2025 Toyota GR Corolla is really two things. A, it is a great sports car, and B, it is a terrible, horrible, no good hatchback. There's not a lot of cargo room, it is over stiff on the road, there's no room for rear passengers, the infotainment is kind of and on top of that, there is a lot of road noise from those big sticky tires. However, those big sticky tires also make this a lot of fun, and the fun quotient is kind of why I would be buying this car. It is so engaging to drive. Like I talked about in my drive impressions, this car feels frenetic. It is egging you on all the time. And if you want something that is going to be an experience and not just a sort of Golf GTI, Golf R, commuter car that also goes fast, this is definitely the way to go. And if you're willing to tolerate the downsides, the stiff ride, the loud tires, and all the rest that comes with it, then the Toyota GR Corolla might just be for you. And with that said, I want to thank all of you for sticking around. I need you to do two things before we get out of here though. I need you to like, and I need you to subscribe, because those things are very important for YouTube metrics, which means we keep getting great cars like this. And that is it. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.